We last left off at the time when Nikolai and Himitsu went off together to head to school until events started happening at the gates where Iwamura, the class president of Nikolai's section, was getting bullied by a bunch of delinquents, and we made the choice to intervene. It might not be the most appropriate thing to do, but we did the right thing for the sake of protecting others. And then we moved on. At the time we met Kyosuke, Anokin's best friend. They were having a little bit of discussion about what's happening at the outside gates of the school. Now during lunch break, Kyosuke and Nikolai went on the cafeteria until suddenly a student bumped into him accidentally, until these two are having an argument of which of them actually bumped each other, until in the end they decided to ignore and just forget everything what's happening, and the strange girl just gave her handkerchief to Nikolai as a way to wipe off the juice that were spread out on his uniform, until Kyosuke told to him that the name of that girl is none other than Ellie herself. Ellie Kobayashi, to be specific. Then right before at the end of the class, the teacher announced that there is a new student that will be joining in the school year with Nikolai, Kyosuke, and Himitsu. They were actually surprised to know, and it's quite unusual to hear that a new student in the middle of the school year. Well, Nikolai didn't pay too much attention because he's completely content on what is actually happening until Kyosuke just shoved his back. Then Nikolai reacts negatively about his actions until he faced the blackboard and saw a girlfriend named Catherine Winters. So that is why in today's video we are going to continue the progress that we have left off in the previous video. So without further ado, let us continue. And this is the second episode of Love, Money, Rock and Roll. I wish I could be honest and tell you exactly how it rips my heart apart when you ignore me, but I won't. I'll stay silent and wait for you to want to talk to me. Being in love with you is undeniably breaking me. I wish I had the guts to walk away from what we had, but I can't, because I know you won't come after me, and that's what hurts the most. I met Katya in my first year of high school. Somehow we ended up dating. She and I, rather incredible. Her mother had been working in Japan for quite some time, same as my parents. Time passed and everything seemed to be going well. Then one day, Katya told me we could no longer be together. Something about her mother getting transferred. I could probably accept that story. I could forgive and forget. But didn't it hurt her even a little? What was I just a co-worker? Someone you simply cut ties with when you transferred to another office? Why we should have an office farewell party? I would have stocked up on gifts. I'm sorry. Goodbye now. Cold, hollow, everyday words. And after all that, she was going to just show up in my class? Nice to meet you. I look forward to studying with you. Seriously. Was there not another school in all of goddamn Tokyo? I couldn't believe it. But still, somewhere deep inside, an ember of hope remained. What if she came back because of me? And that's the reason that she's here right now? Right. Hope springs eternal. I was watching the seconds go by slowly on the clock. Talk to her. I had to talk to her. The bell, at last. I worked up the courage and she floated right past me, heading for the door. Had I been too slow? Too indecisive? What did it matter now? Hey, Nick, are you asleep or what? Kyosuke's words seems to come from afar, as if from another world. But what was I going to say to her? Hi, long time no see. How are things? Anyway, Why hadn't she approached me first? Was she scared? Shy? Nonsense. That wasn't like Katya at all. Then, she must not have wanted to talk. I knew her too well. Kyosuke was shaking me frantically and muttering something, but I was ignoring him. Nico-kun! A new voice. Nico-kun! Himitsu. I lifted my eyes and looked somewhere just past her. Earth to Nico-kun, do you read me? I snapped back to reality. Yeah. What is it? You've forgotten again, haven't you? She was pouting comically. I knew you would, so I decided to come fetch you. What did she want with me? Fetch me? What for? Oh, right. We had made some kind of plan. But what did that matter now? Catherine had left, and she was moving further away with each passing second. Maybe the distance between us now was far greater than all the miles of the Pacific Ocean. But I had no idea what I was going to say to her. I had long been secretly hoping to get over her, to let go and move on with my life, and now this. Regardless, I had to make a decision. If I was going to run after her, I had to get going. Run after Catherine. What the hell was I still doing here? Sorry, I have to go. I said quickly, jumped up and rushed for the exit. Hallway, stairs, steps flying by. Lockers, change my shoes? No time. I bumped into someone. He'll live. Schoolyard, gate. Outside, cars, people. I looked right. No one. I looked left. Catherine was standing next to the school fence, looking sidelong at me with indifference. It took me a few moments to catch my breath. There was absolutely no need to rush, she said coldly. Don't be so surprised. I knew you'd run after me. What else was I supposed to do? That wasn't at all how I wanted to begin the conversation. When you dash off, after all these years, it's only been a year and a half, I guess, but still, you could have said something. A simple hello, at least. Let's clear something up right away. If you think that I've come back because of you, you're mistaken. Why then? That's none of your business. Catherine frowned. If that's the case, why did you choose this school? Why not? I studied here before, and it's a prestigious school. I was forced to acknowledge the logic in her words. On the other hand, Tokyo had more than one decent private school. Either way, she was sneering at me. I was starting to lose my temper. You could have at least said a word or two. You're acting like there was never anything between us. There wasn't, she replied, unruffled. I felt completely deflated. Had Catherine always been this cold and cruel, and I just never noticed? Had she been toying with me and my feelings been tossed me aside like an out-of-style blouse she'd gotten bored of? Katya, don't be like that. Don't call me Katya. She never did like it when I called her that. Although she'd never given a reason. It certainly had nothing to do with the US-Soviet relations. Alright, Miss Catherine, would you be so kind as to explain what's going on? She frowned more deeply. Catherine-san, maybe this wasn't the best time to try to be witty. Catherine suddenly turned around and was about to leave. Without thinking, I grabbed her arm. Wait! Let go or I'm going to scream. I just want to talk. Do you really think I'm going to believe this garbage? I don't care if you believe it or not. Then who are you waiting for here? What if I hadn't come running? There was no chance of that happening. She answered more calmly and stopped trying to pull away. I let go of her arm. I know you. Ah, so you don't know me after all. Because earlier you were saying there was nothing between us. It's all in the past. I am here now because I had to come back. My mother gets sent to Japan again. I get it. All I want is to talk, to understand. What, am I supposed to justify myself to you? Maybe you are. To be honest, this wasn't the first time we argued like this. Maybe before I just hadn't thought much of the fact, accepting it as par for the course. Youngsters, quarrels are soon mended. Only later, after Catherine had left me, that I started to reflect and to analyze. What if she saw things differently? What if every one of our fights had caused her real stress and anguish? But even if that was the case, it was no excuse for acting the way she was now. If you're through with me, then at least be consistent. How do you know I haven't started a new life here? Maybe I never expected to see you again. And now, you show up, you don't want to talk, yet you always be around. That's an interesting state of affairs, like a rope around my neck. I know how it's going to be. I'll have to constantly endure silent glares from you, even if they don't mean anything. Catherine was going to say something, but I continued. Then I'll start to feel guilty from your silent shaming. You said yourself you know me, so you have to understand. And after all this, you're going to insist that nothing's going on, and that you don't need to explain anything to me? You can think whatever you want. Okay, I see. So we're going to find innocence now, are we? How long had I been yelling, I wondered. Passing students glanced at me warily. The girls whispered among each other, while the other guys looked on in disbelief. After everything, are you really going to tell me there is nothing between us? Is nothing now, and never will be? The last part was clearly too much. I blurted out everything that had been weighing down on my chest. Was I really hoping that we could get back together? I must have been. There was no point in lying to myself. But it was one thing to hold out hope when Catherine was in another country, thousands of miles away, and quite another when she was standing in front of me and treating me like I was a public enemy. She put on a barely perceptible smile, but I could see the contempt in her eyes. I just think I deserve an explanation. There's no point in explaining anything to you, Catherine remarked in parting. Whatever. This isn't over yet. We're in the same class now. A girl told her friend not to look my way as the two walked past. To hell with it! I hissed under my breath on my way home. Think she's so special? I've seen better. I was angry at Catherine. Really angry. We had quarreled before, but this time she treated me like dirt. If there was ever a good time to purge her from my heart, wasn't it now? A bunch of boisterous middle schoolers ran past me. One of the boys caught me lightly with his shoulders and said, "Sorry, Onisan." As in, dude, man, uncle, gramps. Did I really look that old? Although, the way I'd been reasoning just now, I wondered how long I'd be able to hold a grudge against Catherine. Would I forget again and revert to an idealized image that clearly did not match the girl I'd just been arguing with at the school gates? Only after getting home was I able to calm down a bit. I spent the rest of the day trying futilely not to think about Catherine. If I continued like this, I was going to lose my mind. Every 5 minutes, the phone rang. I didn't pick up because I knew it was Kyosuke. Who else would be calling me? When it came out to the crazy otaku, I was lucky he wasn't pounding on my door. the end, I unplugged the phone. I tried to keep myself distracted with TV and video games, but they got boring quickly. I even did some homework for a change, played the bass for a bit, and fixed myself a simple dinner. Needless to say, I would rather have eaten Himitsu's cooking, but she must have been busy. Not that Himitsu was under any obligation to make meals for me on a daily basis, but I was used to it. Thinking about it, I realized that my habits had become an integral part of my life, to the point where they started to take center stage in it. Catherine's reappearance was threatening to throw everything off balance. It was like I'd grown senile and flabby in the past year and a half, to the point where I craved stability above all. But why did I need chaos in my life if nothing good was going to come of it anyway? Suddenly, the doorbell rang. It was probably Himitsu, but at this hour? I slowly made my way towards the door, but halfway, a thought struck me. Why would Himitsu need to use the bell? Then it had to be Kyosuke, although it was definitely late for him. The evening routine for my well-fed friend was anime followed by bed. But whatever. But there was nobody at the door at all. I looked around and walked outside, but the street was empty. Stupid pranksters. Yet someone had definitely been here, as on the way back I discovered a note on the doorstep. The note read, "Nikolai-san, be careful. You are in grave danger. Certain powerful people linked to your father are after you. This is not a prank or hoax." Yeah, sure. Next in order would be a busty magical girl in my living room ready to obey my every command. "Kyosuke!" I shouted. "This isn't funny." And why bring my dad into this? My parents. The incident. They fled the Soviet Union when I was 7. In Japan, they worked as regular engineers at Kobayashi Corporation. After they passed, I had the option of going back to the USSR to live with my relatives, but I ended up staying, since I'd lived in Japan for most of my life. My father's friend helped take care of the legal formalities while his bank account kept me from starving. "Kyosuke!" I called out, less confidently this time. The only reply I got was from a neighbor who barked something about it being nighttime and my yelling. Well, maybe it wasn't Kyosuke. But then, who? If the note was a joke, its author had failed to deliver the punchline. And what if there was a simpler explanation? What if it was for real? I twirled the note between my fingers. It was an ordinary piece of notebook paper carefully clipped. The words were Japanese, written in steady hand, although the spelling left something to be desired. Why write by hand at all, I wondered. Wouldn't it have been simpler to type out the message? Or in a pinch, clip words from a newspaper and assemble the note that way, like in those cheesy crime shows? At least I could rule Kyosuke out. I would have recognized his handwriting. "You are in grave danger. Linked to your father." What if it were those punks? Just because their parents were loaded didn't mean they had A's in Japanese. Or maybe Elisama's servants had decided to take revenge for the cafeteria incident. No, that was ridiculous. Ultimately, who would bother with a regular Japanese student? And why now of all times? Right on the heels of Catherine's return, too. To be honest, I couldn't remember how good Catherine's Japanese grades were. I couldn't remember her handwriting either, but I knew she'd spent considerably less time in Japan than I. Catherine had been a decent but not straight A student, and after a year and a half without practice, at any rate, she was the prime suspect now. It didn't even occur to me to ask why. Her motives had stopped making sense to me long ago. Either way, I had to try to find some answers at school tomorrow. But now, just time for bed. I hadn't feel so worn out at the end of the day in a long time. But sleep wouldn't come. I kept tossing and turning and getting mad at myself for it. Meanwhile, the clock ticked past midnight. I flinched and perked up my ears. Perhaps I'd imagined it. Not again. I hopped out of bed, eyes scanning the room for anything I could use to defend myself. The base wouldn't do. I walked up to the door on stiff legs and asked in a shaky voice, "Who is it? Nico-kun?" I breathed a sigh of relief and opened the door. "Do you know what time it is?" "Sorry, but your phone was off." "So? Is that a reason to turn up here in the dead of the night?" "No, but I tried calling several times. I wanted to know if you're going to school tomorrow." "If you're so concerned about my attendance, you shouldn't wake me up in the middle of the night." "I'm sorry." Suddenly, I felt bad. Himitsu was just being herself, while I was taking my problems out on her. She wasn't the one who had brought Catherine back or left a note. No, it's my fault. I should be apologizing. It's been an awful day. I mean, it's been a tough day. Very busy. And I was already asleep. Trying to sleep, at any rate. Okay, I'll be going then. Good night. I shut the door behind her and returned to bed. If today was tough, what would tomorrow be like? September 8th, 1987. A 100 bells chimed with 100 melodies in my head, announcing the morning. In that medley were the cheerful chirping of the birds, the construction on a neighboring street, the boisterous shouts of street vendors, the damned fan that hadn't quit humming for a second, and the grumpy muttering somewhere close by. The fixed gaze of large green eyes, the pouting lips, and the two red braids. Hold on. This had already happened before. I jumped out of bed, stared in bewilderment at Himitsu, and blurted out, "What day is it today?" "Tuesday," she replied, frightened. "Oh, what's wrong?" "Tuesday. Huh. Alright then. Tuesday it is then." I scanned the room meticulously. The open notebook I had tried doing my homework in the night before was still in the same spot, which meant that everything was fine. It just felt like tomorrow hadn't come. "What do you mean?" "Well, like when you wake up and today is still yesterday, like in a sci-fi novel." "You read too many of those." Himitsu laughed. Things did seem to be running their normal course. Except, I now become aware of a peculiar smell. I sniffed the air. "Is that?" "Yes, well, I prepared breakfast ahead of time." A big pot of borscht sat on the stove. Good lord, but why? "Didn't you ask for some yesterday?" "No, I didn't. I just mentioned it in passing. It was a joke." "Well, you know what?" she said menacingly. "You're going to have to eat this joke now." Soup for breakfast. Now, that was certainly unorthodox. Himitsu had outdone herself this time. Suppose yesterday I said something about foie gras and the 1970s Chateau Margaux. Would they be awaiting me now too? In any case, the borscht tasted quite good. Granted, it wasn't exactly a traditional recipe, Well, Himitsu was sitting across from me, looking at me intently. Why aren't you eating? I'm waiting to hear what you think. Oh, yeah, sorry. It's delicious. Really? She didn't believe me. Yes, yes, really. Why would it be? Himitsu tried the borscht. Fair enough. Now, don't you dare complain about my cooking again. When did I ever complain? You just don't get my humor. I do get it. I thought it was just some light-hearted banter, but Himitsu didn't look herself, usual self. Every so often, a shadow of sadness passed over her face. Did something happen? No. What about you? What about me? At that moment, the events of the previous day flashed before my eyes. The surprise awakening and the borscht had temporarily made me forget about Catherine and the note. Kyosuke must have already told Himitsu everything. Everything's fine. Just a bit unexpected. Don't worry. I'll be alright. Good. If you say so. She smiled. Let's go, or we'll be late for school. We changed only a few words along the way. Somehow, we just couldn't find a suitable subject for conversation. I didn't want to tell Himitsu about the note just yet, and she probably hadn't had anything happen to her overnight that was worth sharing. Sure, I could talk about some random stuff, but that wasn't my thing. Finally, we reached the school. No incidents today, I hope. I hemmed. Alright, see you. Don't sleep in class. Himitsu smiled and headed for her classroom. Okay, now I had to think of a way to snag Catherine's notebook without anyone noticing. I hope she'd written something in it. Preferably in Japanese. I was walking down the hallway, lost in thought when someone called my name. Anukin-kun, hold it there. The school principal. What was his name? Yes, Kiyama-sensei. What is it? Follow me to my office, please. But class is about to start. I protested like this sort of thing was something new to me. It won't take long. A wiry old man in his 70s, maybe even older, Kiyama-sensei was always cloyingly polite and cold. On top of that, he dressed and carried himself in a strictly European manner. I'd always been shocked by how devoted some Japanese people were to the Western lifestyle and culture. I could think of any number of sayings on the subject along the lines of "till thine own self be true." Although, here, this had become something of a tradition in its own right. This was, after all, an elite school. What's the issue, exactly? Anoki-kun, please come along. Well, naturally, he wasn't going to reprimand me in the middle of the hallway in view of the entire school, was he? Oh, Ellie. We went into his office, but someone was already there. Huh. Well, if it isn't Ojo-sama herself. Standing next to the principal's desk was in fact Ellie-sama. Ah, the boar from yesterday. She seemed equally surprised to see me here. Yesterday's cafeteria incident came back to me in vivid detail. The madam did give me a kerchief in the end, to wipe myself, and I tossed it into the dirty laundry at home. Whoops, I needed to return it. Let me guess, you're a frequent visitor here? She asked, sarcastically. Well, I certainly didn't expect to find myself groveling at your Grace's feet today. That'll be all, Kobayashi-san. Kobayashi. The last name sounded familiar. Ellie bade the principal a polite farewell and walked past me, shooting me an angry look. So, Anokin-kun, do you know why you're here? I've got a couple theories. The principal sighed and gave me a sad look from behind his glasses. Anokin-kun, I understand that Japanese culture is alien to you, but here, at this school, we have students of every nationality. we endeavor to provide all of them with the best opportunities. In return, we expect an appropriate level of respect and adherence to the school rules. Here we go. I think you ought to understand this, especially considering your situation. What about my situation? Let's not make this personal now. No. What I meant was... Embarrassed, he removed his glasses and began wiping them slowly with a special cloth. I meant to say that we make no distinctions between our students. The rules are the same for everyone. I understand. In that case, you must also understand that you can't just skip classes for no reason. He put his glasses back on and gave me a hard look. And speaking of your attendance record, I understand. If you understand, why do you keep skipping classes? Do you know who sponsors our school? I shrugged. Kobayashi Corporation. This name does mean something to you, does it not? The company's president himself is chairman of our school's board of trustees. The centuries-old traditions. At that point, I tuned him out. Kobayashi Corporation and Kobayashi Ellie. Things were adding up. Interesting. I wondered, would she still be the school queen if she had been born into an ordinary family? A family like Iwamura's, for instance? Anokin-kun, what's that smirk for? Did I say something funny? I'm very sorry, Kiyama-sensei. This will not happen again. I bowed to the ground. Alright, that's enough. The old man apparently hadn't been expecting this degree of repentance from me. I have seen the error in my ways, and I promise this will never happen again. Well, that's the most important thing, the fact that you understand and don't let it happen again. Very well, go now, or you'll be late for class. Thank you very much. I'm going now. I formally took my leave and marched out of his office. So why didn't you tell me that this Elisama of yours is a Kobayashi? There were still a couple of minutes left before the beginning of the lesson. I did tell you. No, you didn't. You said her grandfather was the chairman of the board of trustees, as if I'm supposed to know who the chairman is. That's the problem. You never know anything. Anyway, why do you ask? I got called into the principal's office just now. For skipping class? Why else? At that moment, the bell rang. Only now did I remember Catherine. Her seat was behind me, so I couldn't watch her constantly. Was she writing anything down? How was I going to grab her notebook unnoticed anyway? Surprisingly, I was hardly at all anxious. Sleep had cleared my mind, and I found the whole situation more intriguing than troubling. The closing bell finally rang. Catherine got up and left the classroom. This was my chance. I slowly approached her desk, trying to look as inconspicuous as possible. I glanced around. The classmates were all minding their own business. Excuse me. I leaned down, opened the notebook, flipped through the pages. No, the handwriting was completely different. But how? Why? Sure, I had some issues with Japanese characters, but this much was obvious. Catherine did not write yesterday's note. Anokin-kun! I stood at attention. Caught, exposed, disgraced. Go to the teacher's room with Iwamura-san and bring the printouts for the next lesson. That was close. I looked at Iwamura. She stood nearby, staring indifferently out the window. Right now, I only wanted to get out of the classroom as quickly as possible. Hi. Well, should we get going? I can go alone. She didn't even look in my direction. But we were told to go together. I managed by myself. Under different circumstances, I would have gladly agreed with her. Listen, I understand it all, but I've already been to principal's office today, and I'm not blurring with a desire to go back. Suit yourself. Iwamura shrugged and headed toward the door. The hallways were unexpectedly empty. It was as if the students were hiding away in anticipation of something. Iomar walked in silence. This was how she was acting after I defended her the day earlier. The awkward silence desperately demanded a conversation to break it. So, do you have to do this often? I couldn't think of anything better to say. She raised her eyes and looked at me in surprise. That was a first. So, I had achieved the desired effect after all. Well, of course, I'm the class president. Oh, yeah, right. Sorry. Silence again. It's just that we've never really talked. I didn't even know your first name. Why do you need to? It's only natural. Here, I'm Nikolai. This visibly embarrassed Iwamura, who seemed to be hesitating with her answer. In Japanese culture, addressing someone by their first name is a sign of close, possibly vulgar familiarity. This was especially true in our case, but I didn't bother with all these conventions. Kagome, she said quietly. What? Really? A loud burst of laughter escaped my lips, spooking several passing girls who went as far around us as they could. What's so funny? Kagome frowned. Nothing. It's just, well, you know, it's a weird name. Japanese children's game and a song from it. No weirder than yours. What? What's wrong with my name? It's a normal name. Nikolai. Nicholas, if you prefer, or Nick. You're all the same. She was starting to get worked up, it seemed. Who's we? Gaijin? Huh. Foreigner. No, the local morons. How rude. Kagami snorted and turned away. Listen, do you have a problem with me? I think you have a problem. Oh, really? And what is it? I'm curious. Who's that new foreigner? I opened my mouth in surprise. Why would she be asking about that? Why? You've been staring at her non-stop for 2 days now. Have you been spying on me? I'd have to be blind not to notice. She responded, unfazed. That's really none of your business. Of course it's not. Kagome smirked. But neither is my life any of yours, so why are you prying? She had a point. She's someone you used to know. We knew each other at one point. We were in the same class. I'd say you take an unhealthy interest in your old acquaintances. Why did you bring her up anyway? It's not every day that we have a new student in our class, and such a striking foreigner at that. I'm a foreigner too, you know. She looked me up and down, snickered, and said, Yeah, sure. I knew it. Not only would my face not pass as Japanese, but now I was being denied the title of a proper gaijin as well. Are you always like this? I was starting to lose my temper. We've arrived. Wait here. Hey! Just in time, too, before I could open my mouth. Kagome went into the teacher's room, and before I knew it, she was back with a large stack of paper. Carry it. What? all of it? I couldn't see any way to carry the heap comfortably. What if we each carry half? Didn't you, yourself, volunteer to come along? No, I didn't. The teacher sent me, if you recall. Fine, give it here. Kagome attempted to take all of the papers from me at once. No way, that won't do either. Which must look more pathetic now. Spurred on by wounded pride, I walked fast, so the return trip took considerably less time. I dropped the mountain of papers onto the teacher's desk with a thud, while Kagome took her seat and returned to her usual window gazing. I guess no one deserves to be bullied, but man, I could almost understand those punks from yesterday. Judging by the clock, the bell was less than a minute away. Catherine's desk was empty. I turned to Michael, who sat next to her. Did Catherine... the new girl, did she go somewhere? Don't know. Wasn't really paying attention. Why? Never mind. Oh, no reason. Bummed. I sat down on my desk. Could she have somehow noticed that I opened her notebook? No way. Catherine wasn't even in the classroom at the same time. Did someone tell her? How long ago did she leave? I'm telling you, I don't know. Are you talking about the new girl? I think she went to see the principal. A classmate had overheard our conversation. Thanks. The chair beneath me felt like it was on fire. That's how badly I wanted to run after her. But to what end? What was I going to tell her? As the bell sounded, my feet seemed to acquire a will of their own. They carried me to the door, then past the teacher and out into the hallway. I turned the corner at a run and stopped. What the hell am I doing? Why all this? The school had gone silent, frozen still, as though in awe at the inescapable might of pure knowledge. I was slowly tiptoeing through the empty hallways toward the principal's office. If I were to run into one of the teachers now, I would have to explain myself all over again. On the other hand, it would be no better if I showed up at his office myself. Speaking of which, here it was. I pressed an ear to the door, but no sound was coming from the other side. Either they were playing the silent game or Catherine wasn't there. So, what next? It was too late to go back to class. I wandered the empty hallways and didn't even notice how I ended up in the old wing. Our school had been repeatedly rebuilt since it first opened its doors right after the war, with new buildings added on as old ones fell into decay. Inefficient, if you asked me. Why not tear down the old structure first and build a new one in its place? Theoretically, there shouldn't be anyone in this wing, but suddenly I heard music. A guitar. The sound was coming from what, judging by the plaque, was the old music classroom. I opened the door a crack. Okay, hang on a second. Okay, I'm still recording, alright? Yeah, I'm still recording, but... Okay, this is too early. Gotta get back right now. So I'm gonna have to save the progress in this time. The first video almost went 1 hour, so I gotta make sure that I have to shorten things a bit up for this one. Whew. But anyway, that's it for today's the second episode, so thank you so much guys for watching. And if you're new watching this video right now, and please make sure to hit the subscribe button and also hit the notification bell to get notified for the upcoming videos in my channel. And that's it. It's time for me to take some rest, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care and stay safe. Goodbye.